presentation this afternoon is on Scarborough's Danish Village, the history and the background, presented by Frederic Thompson and David Rines. In 1930, Portland hotelier Henry Rines, grandfathers to both, opened the Danish Village in Scarborough. It was an ambitious first-class motor court comprising 100 units. Designed by architect Peter Holdensen, the lodging establishment drew its inspiration from Ribe, one of Denmark's oldest towns. In this illustrated presentation, Fred Thompson will explore the history of the Danish Village and its architectural roots, and Dave Rines will introduce the town of Ribe, Denmark, that inspired this distinctive Scarborough landmark. Gentlemen.
I'm really not sure why that David and I are here today, because Rodney knows more probably about the Danish Village than any one particular person. I have brought some brochures that were actually copied from a Landmarks edition that talked about the Danish Village, and anybody's free to take one with them when they go. It gives quite a background about the Danish Village and what it was like and that sort of thing. But we're here today to kind of talk about how this idea came about and why it's here in the Portland area. Our grandfather actually had very bad allergies in May, in the spring, but mostly May, and he could not stay around here. So it became apparent to him that he had to leave, and he took his family on many occasions to go to Europe and visited various places in Europe. But his father was actually started out his career selling silverware and traveled all over Europe as well. So they were sort of familiar with the theme of Europe and had took their families there. And so when my grandfather built the Eastland Hotel, he had several different themes going inside the hotel. If you don't remember some of those themes, he had an Egyptian room. And one of the reasons he had an Egyptian room, which looked like the inside of a Egyptian king's tomb, one of the reasons that he had that, it was a very popular theme in the early 1920s because they had just discovered King Tut's tomb, and it was worldwide news. And because the country had just come off World War I, anything that get people from thinking about how horrible World War I was making headline news, and so he captured that theme, and they had a dining room that looked like the inside of an Egyptian tomb. Actually, parts of that are still there today. They're all hidden behind the walls, but some of those artifacts still exist, I'm told. I haven't actually seen them myself, but so he also had various. If you came into the lobby, you would think you were coming in some Persian court of some sort. We've got some pictures here that I can show you afterwards of what the lobby of the Eastland Hotel looked like. And my grandfather was, his father had died just in 1919, and in the 20s he was very busy. He was building the Eastland Hotel. He had inherited the Congress Square Hotel, which is on the other side of the block from where the Eastland Hotel is today, which is now the Eastland Western, which always confuses me. It's in someone else's ownership. But my great-grandfather had built the Congress Square Hotel, which is attached and on the other side of the block from the present Eastland Hotel. So my grandfather was building the Eastland, and he realized that he was very worried about the promotion of the hotel and making sure that people would get the word out that he had built this hotel. And someone had come along to him to visit him. They had been walking up all of Congress Street and gone to various department stores. But he came in, this gentleman came into the hotel and said, I've been going up and down Congress Street trying to sell the idea of building a radio station and starting a radio station, and everybody has snubbed me, and I think it'd be a great idea, and if you're building a hotel, maybe it'd be good for your promotion of your hotel. So consequently, WCSH, which of course the call letters were the Congress Square Hotel, CSH, and that still exists today. We, as a family, have long since left the broadcasting business, but he was not, he was particularly worried that the promotion of his hotel wasn't going to be successful, and so the fact that there was the possibility of having a radio station at that same time that it was built really intrigued him, and so it was a natural fit for him. But also what was happening was that the automobile was a tremendous threat as well, because now he'd built this nice hotel in downtown Portland, but he was worried that all the tourists would just go right around Portland and go on up the coast or up north or whatever. And so it was, he wanted to capture that audience because of the popularity of the hotels. So, excuse me, the popularity of the automobile. And so it would only make sense that if he could capture them as they were coming up from Boston on the only route you could come to if you come along, if you came up from Boston, that would be Route 1, going right through Scarborough. So his original intention was to build a colonial village type. When we, as a family, never knew that until about a month ago, when my brother handed me this box of material, I went through it, and on it were a whole variety of photographs that he had taken, having traveled up the coast to find 17th century homes, so that he could use those homes as examples of what his colonial village was going to be like. But in the same time, he had a very good friend of his was Peter Holdensen, who was the architect for many of the parts of the Eastland Hotel, including the Danish tea room. And Holdensen was Danish himself, and he was able to talk my grandfather, said, no, let's not do a colonial village, let's do a Danish village. And the village that he had in mind was going to be built after the village of Ribe in Denmark. And I'm going to stop here because, unless there's some questions, but my cousin David has just recently been in Denmark and visited the town and has brought some images back with him. And I think you're going to be comparing the old Danish village to the pictures of the present Ribe, Denmark. So I'm going to turn this over to him, and we'll answer any questions anybody has after he speaks.
Okay, because I might be walking around a little bit. I'm going to start with a few disclaimers. And first of all, by any chance, does anyone here speak Danish? No one. Oh, thank God. Good. Because I can't avoid using some proper nouns in Danish. Oh, great. Okay, thanks, Don. I've tried to avoid using any Danish words at all, but I can't avoid it because I'll have to use some proper nouns. But if I were to use Danish, I'm going to mangle the language, and I don't want to offend anyone. Secondly, I am not a historian, and I have, to be honest, I have not researched the history of Ribe in any depth. So during the Q&A, if you have detailed questions for me about Ribe, I'm sorry, I might not be able to answer them. So most of my talk is just going to be a simple travel log. I'm going to tell you about my trip to Ribe, and I'm going to show you some of the houses and make some comparisons between Ribe and the Danish Village. Some of the photos here will appear more than once. I've done that because in one case I might be pointing out one thing, and in another case, when I show the photo a second time, I might be pointing out something different. At the end of the talk, I'm going to go off topic, and I'm going to talk about food and souvenirs, the souvenirs I brought back from Ribe. And one final disclaimer is when I practiced my talk, when I was practiced doing this, I did it with a computer in my lap. And if I had a map like this, I'd be pointing to the computer while it's in my lap. But here I can't do that. So I may, at least once, walk around to show something on the map. So I'm going to walk around right now. Oh, great. My cat would love this. So Ribe is right here. It's about a little over 3-hour drive from Copenhagen. And it's close to the border with Germany. It's about an hour and 15-minute drive up from Germany. And there are loads and loads of German tourists in Ribe. Right here is the Wadden Sea, and I mention that because at the very, very end of my talk, I'm going to talk about the Wadden Sea. Ribe is Denmark's, I read online that it is Denmark's oldest town, but in other places I read it's one of the oldest towns. It does celebrate its Viking past, and there's a Viking museum in Ribe, and there's a Viking center. It's maybe something along the lines of Old Sturbridge Village or Williamsburg, where they have people dressed up in costumes and they recreate certain scenes. So, oops. Here we go. This is the hotel we stayed at. This is the Hotel Dagmar, and I'm only including this here to sort of orient ourselves in the town. Now, if you're facing the hotel like this, directly in back of you is Ribe Cathedral. Over here, on this side right there, it's what they call the shopping street, the one big shopping street in Ribe. And then right about here, directly across the street there, is Weiss's Inn, and I'm going to talk about Weiss's Inn in some detail at the very end. There's no overnight parking or no long-term parking in the center of town, in the center of Ribe, so you have to drive your car out of town, park it there, and then walk back in town to the hotel. And that's what we're going to do right now. We're going out of town, we're parking the car, and we're going to walk back in again. And as I'm walking back in, I'm going to talk about some of the architectural elements of the town. This is convenient. I like this. So right here, this is the half timbering. This half timbering here, they have timbers, which is often filled in with plaster or brick or some other material. Very, very common throughout the town of Ribe. Also, it's a primary element, I found, of the architecture in the Danish Village also. Again, right here, you'll see that half timbering. You note the color of the walls because again and again and again, you're going to see it's called yellow ochre. You see it right here too. Slightly different tones and hues of that yellow color. It's called, again, yellow ochre, and it's a natural pigment. And the pigment is a byproduct of mining. And the color there, the yellow color, is a result of iron oxide in the pigment. And it comes in other colors too. You'll see some reds, which are, again, a product of the mining, and it's because of the iron oxide in the natural pigment. Some oranges too, but you'll see it again and again and again. It was used commonly because it was easily available, and therefore it was affordable, and also it was durable. It lasted a long time, and it was protective against the elements. And the climate and the weather in Denmark can be harsh, and therefore something that is durable and protective is going to be used quite often. And again, it was affordable. So again, you're going to see the varying hues of this yellow ochre. Again, the half timbering right there. Again, the yellow hues of the yellow ochre. A prominent element of the streets and the squares of Ribe was the cobblestones. Almost all of the streets and the large squares had these cobblestones, and so it was a prominent part of the architecture. But to me, it contributed to the overall feel of Ribe as an ancient town. And before we started the talk, I was talking with Rodney and asking Rodney if he knew if the streets of the Danish Village were cobblestoned. And I've looked at lots and lots and lots of photos of the Danish Village, and I could not find any cobblestoning in any of them. And Rodney also was not certain whether it had the cobblestones. And I wondered why not, why they didn't. Because again, as I said, to me, the cobblestones really contribute to the feel of the town as an ancient town. And I'm guessing that simply is a matter of cost, perhaps. That, the cobblestone itself is expensive, but even more than that, it's the labor involved in putting in these paving stones one by one and keeping them even. I think the maintenance. If you've driven along 4th Street, you'll find those short little sections of 4th Street that are cobblestoned, and they're a mess now. I think it really requires a lot of maintenance to keep them like that. Again, cobblestones. This is a bar right here. And I love the way you have, on the right-hand side, the cobblestones go straight down like that. And on the left-hand side, they kind of sweep in an arc, and the contrast of those two I found beautiful. This is another color that is very common in the houses in Ribe and in Denmark, and actually in Scandinavia as a whole. This is called red ochre. And again, it's common for the same reasons that the yellow ochre was popular. Easily available, affordable, protective, and durable. This is also called sometimes fallen red because it came from the fallen copper mine. Again, yellow ochre, red tiled roofs. The red ochre again right here. Sort of an orange hue to it right here. As I was walking around Ribe, again and again, I would come to these doors that I thought were beautiful, really pretty. And so they're very colorful and a lot of detail in them. And so the doors really impressed me. And I walked into a little museum, and in the museum, they were selling this postcard. So I thought, okay, I'm not the only person who is impressed by the doors here. The doors in Ribe are kind of a thing that the town as a whole is proud of. So I took my own photos of the doors. And I found the doors beautiful, not only in and of themselves, but also with what surrounds the doors, what's around them, and creates this contrast. So if you have the dark blue door, and around it you have the red ochre walls of the exterior of the house, and you have the cobblestones below, and you have this pretty little flower in front of it. Or the green doors with the details inside, and the contrast of the green door against the bricks. Or the black door with all kinds of details within it, and the contrast against the brick. Up above, you can see the half timbering right there. Once again, the contrast of the blue door with the red ochre walls, the white frames of the windows, the flowers in front of them. I'm not sure if those are roses or not. Take a look at this right there. Is this? It's a little, I don't know, a little urban scape, which I thought was kind of cute. This door here I thought was significant because it was the only door I saw that was not well kept up. All the others were newly painted. This one looks a little down at the heels though. It creates a contrast with all of the other doors and fronts of the houses, which are very, very well kept up. Everything was beautiful, I thought. Again, the contrast of the red against the black half timbering and the brick, the geraniums out front. Same thing here, same contrast. Again, the flowers out front kind of accentuating the color of it all. And this is the doorway to Weiss's Inn, which I'm going to talk about again later. And here's an interior door at Weiss's Inn. And I get to the center of town and I find this fountain. And I'm wondering if, so in the Danish Village, there's also a fountain. And I wonder if the fountain in the Danish Village was in any way modeled after this one right here, or took any elements of this one right here. But if you look at we'll come back and look at this again, but if you look at the Danish Village fountain, there are very, very few similarities. It really doesn't look much like the other at all. The fountain in Ribe is dedicated to St. Catherine. Dedicated to St. Catherine. St. Catherine's Church is right close by. There's a monastery. St. Catherine's Monastery is right close by. The fountain in the Danish Village was dedicated to a Danish patriot. So there's really very, very few similarities to it. And then I thought, well, maybe Peter Holdensen simply, he saw, he was from Ribe itself, and so he had this fountain in his hometown, and he thought, well, that fountain added a lot to Ribe, and so I'll put one in the Danish Village too. But I looked at the timing of this, and so Holdensen left Denmark around 1883. He was 15 years old. And then the Danish Village was built in 1928 and 1929. And then this was not built until 1929. So the math just does not add up. So perhaps simply Henry Rines and Peter Holdensen thought that a fountain would create a nice center to the Danish Village, sort of a center of the town. So architect Peter Holdensen, he modeled the buildings in the Danish Village after the buildings in his hometown of Ribe, but how did he model them after the buildings in Ribe? What are the similarities? And that's what we're going to look at right now. And first, I'm going to look at the similarities between This here over on the left is what they called, right there, it's what they called the town hall in the Danish Village. And they called it the town hall, but it was a dining hall, and it was also the front desk was in there. And so the similarities between the town hall and some of the larger buildings that you'll see in Ribe are, see the arched windows, the brick fronting as a whole, the red tiled roofs, and what's called the stepped gables. Again, this is the Danish Village, another angle on the town hall, and you'll see the brick front. You can't see the arched windows here, but you can see very clearly the stepped gables right here. But there you have the arch, the only remaining extant part of the Danish Village now, and it's over in Memorial Park. And this is Ribe. This is a restaurant, a steak restaurant, and you'll see the brick, the arched windows, the stepped gables, the red tiled roofs. This is it's a hotel and a restaurant. The name of it is Den Gamle Arrest, and it used to be a prison. So it's now a hotel. And again, with this, you will see the arched windows, the stepped gables, and the tiled roofs. Now, when we were looking at the houses of Ribe, I pointed out the distinctive colors, the reds and the oranges and the yellows of Ribe, the houses in Ribe. But I don't know what color the houses were painted in the Danish Village. The actual, when I say the houses, I mean the units that the guests stayed in. I've looked at all kinds of photos, and I just can't figure out. It looks white to me, like it was just whitewashed. Again, I asked Rodney about this, and he wasn't sure either. So it looks white, but I found some postcards in which it looks like they might have been painted some kind of color. You'll see the sort of pastel colors of these houses right here, and again right here. And actually, quite a number of them look like it's yellow ochre to me. But I wonder if these are simply colorized postcards, and that in actuality, the houses were simply painted white. I don't know. The main feature I find the similarities between the actual units at the Danish Village and the, excuse me, and the houses in Ribe are this half timbering, which you'll see there, and there, and a number of other places. Again, this is the Danish Village. You see the half timbers right here. I also thought, and I don't know if Peter Holdensen had this in mind, but the windows to me also look quite similar between the windows in the Danish Village and the windows in Ribe. Again, this is the Danish Village. You see the half timbering, and this is Ribe. Half timbering right here. Whoops, daisy. And here. And here. And I don't know if the windows are similar or not, but perhaps. This is the house of Henry and Adeline Rines that was built in Cape Elizabeth, 1926, 1927, at the same time that the Eastland Hotel was being built. Henry Rines had a lot of the workmen come out and build this house. It's a Tudor-style house, and as you'll notice, a Tudor-style house, it does employ the half timbering that you saw in a lot of, in both Ribe and in the Danish Village. So Tudor uses that element in it. It seems that Henry Rines may have also had sort of a predilection for this element of architecture already. My cousin Ben, Fred's brother, told me he'd heard a rumor that when the Danish Village was built, that the carpenters were prohibited from using levels because they wanted the Danish Village to come out just as crooked as Ribe. And I have no idea if this is true or not, but I'm going to show you some of the crooked parts of Ribe, like this doorway right here. And this doorway here, this is my hotel, in the interior of my hotel. And this is Weiss's Inn. And again, you can see it right here, that angle there. And again, right here. And once again. I wonder how they opened and closed their doors. I mean, wouldn't they get stuck? Again, right here. This is so as Fred told you, Peter Holdensen, before the Danish Village was built, he designed the Danish tea room in the Eastland Hotel. And the Danish tea room was designed after the restaurant at Weiss's Inn, which I've mentioned several times so far. Okay. This is the exterior. This is the entryway to Weiss's Inn. This is the outside. And this is a description of the restaurant at Weiss's Inn. This is included on the menu. So I'm actually going to read it because there's a few things that I'm going to point out. Weiss Stew is one of Denmark's oldest and most beautiful inns. The house is half timbered and dates back to year 1600. The interior is still the original from 1704 with decorated ceilings, Dutch tin-glazed earthenware, panel walls decorated with biblical subjects, more than 400-year-old clock, and also a more than about 700-year-old baptismal dish. So, there's the clock that was mentioned. There's the baptismal dish that was mentioned. These right here are what was it called? The Dutch tin-glazed earthenware, which I simply know as Dutch tiles or Delft tiles sometimes. Take a look at two things here. The ceiling. Again, we're in the restaurant at Weiss's Inn. Take a look at the ceiling and also at this piece of furniture right here. This is another photo of the Danish tea room. You'll see the ceiling right here is very similar to the ceiling at Weiss's Inn. You have something that looks like a baptismal dish. And what was the other thing? And the tiles, again, these are Dutch tiles right here. Note when I was talking with Fred about this, I called this a bedpan. And Fred said, "No, David, no, that's not a bedpan. You do something different with a bedpan." So it's a bed warmer. But there's also one at Weiss's Inn. So Henry Rines bought a lot of the furniture and knickknacks and things hanging on the walls. He actually bought them in Ribe and brought them to Portland in an effort to make the Danish tea room feel as authentic as possible. Again, the ceilings, again, similar to the ceilings in the Danish tea room. This is a little bit closer up. Again, you have the baptismal dish, this piece of furniture here, which you saw in the earlier photo of the Danish Village. The bed warmer, which you also saw in the Danish tea room. And this was my lunch. So we're starting with the food now. I told you at the end we'd go off topic and just talk about food. So this is what I had for lunch in at Weiss's Inn. My wife couldn't find anything on the menu she liked, so she just had a latte. But I had herring, and herring, and herring, and lard. The Cristiano herring, I think there's an island in Denmark called Christianso, and I'm guessing that Ruth's homemade Cristiano herring was done in the style that's done on that island. And here's my lunch. Herring, 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 lard. So, in homage to my lunch at Weiss's Inn, this is one of my souvenirs that I brought back from Denmark. Fish, herring. And this was my other souvenir that I brought back, licorice. I was mentioning to Dawn before we started the rock and roll band, the Grateful Dead. A member of the Grateful Dead recently passed away, and I was reading a newspaper article about the band as a whole, and one of the band members said, we're kind of like licorice. Not everyone likes us, but the people who do like us love us. And that's the Scandinavians with their licorice. They love their licorice. And some of the licorice that they have there, it includes, what's it called? Ammonium chloride, which gives the licorice a very distinctive and strong taste. Now, at one point, the European Union tried to regulate the amount of ammonium chloride that you could put into licorice, and the Scandinavians were so outraged and so angry that the European had to back down, and they say, okay, put in as much ammonium chloride as you want, and they do. I also had licorice ice cream and licorice liqueur. And the name of this liqueur is Sort Sol. Excuse me if I'm mispronouncing it. If it is Sort Sol. And Sort Sol, it translates, the literal translation of it is black sun. But it also means this. Do we have any birders here? Yes, what is it? It's a murmuration, right, exactly. So this is a murmuration. This takes us back, at the very beginning I pointed out the Wadden Sea, and this is very close to the Wadden Sea. There are some marshlands there, and there are just thousands upon thousands, maybe millions, I don't know, of starlings who nest there. And just after the sun goes down, starlings come out in these formations, and they fly about in these huge formations. And people say it blocks out the sun, it obscures the sun, therefore black sun or Sort Sol. Okay. There is a Danish candy store in Portland now on Cumberland Avenue. And up at the back, I've brought back some licorice from Denmark, and I've also bought some more from the Danish candy store. For those of you who are not licorice fans, and don't worry, you don't have to apologize, I also brought some regular candy. That's it. Thank you very much. So if you have any questions for Fred or I, please let us know.
Everybody is allowed to have some.
Oh my God, if the stuff that doesn't get eaten up has to go to the Scarborough Historical Society, so take some home to your husband or your wife or your children. Again, it's up at the back there. It's in the packages now, but I'll get it out.
You mentioned several times talked about the coloration of the walls coming from byproducts of metal mining. Were those mines in Denmark?
Yes, they were. Yeah. Yep. The foul. What's it called again? Shoot. Do I have it here? Oh, Fallen. It's a Fallen mine was the name of it, right? And there may be mines in other countries. There may also be mines in other countries because these colors that you see, it's not only Denmark, it's throughout. I found this, the yellow colors and the reds, I find it throughout Scandinavia. I watch a lot of Scandinavian movies and series on TV, and again you'll see these red and these yellow houses. So, yeah.
I guess I'll just say a little trivia to you. Back in the 1940s, during the Second World War, Portland had a shipyard, and families used to come there, and the men and the mothers, the women, would work, and the children used to go to Dunstan School, which is now called On the Vine. I went there to school for 8 years and made friends with some of these children, and they invited me over there one time, maybe more times, but it was a long time ago, so I don't remember. But it was colorful little houses. These people were living in them. They were small. They were all attached, which was different to me. I wish I could remember whether there was cobblestones or not, but I don't remember that. But anyway, that's just a little bit of trivia for me. And I wish that I could remember more, but I can't.
But that is interesting, but that they were colorful houses. So
Yes.
yeah, I thought they might have been white, but that's interesting.
And they were attached.
Yeah.
And they, if I remember correctly, they were small inside.
Okay.
But yes, so I just want to share that.
Oh, thank you, thank you. Do you want to add anything about what happened with the Danish Village, with being cut up for during World War II for the?
During World War II, the military took over the Danish Village and needed it for housing. Housing was in great demand during the war here because the North Atlantic Fleet was stationed here. And of course, the shipyards were big. So, yeah,
And
there was a demand.
I lived also at the time, and still do, next to a motel and cabins. And the children used to, I can remember going to school with them too.
Yeah.
You mentioned that you don't know what the colors were inside. I thought in some of your slides, some of the early ones, there are actual color photos. Is that not the case? They're all tinted?
Of the Danish Village?
Yeah.
No, I don't think so. I think they looked to me like they were colorized, but I can't swear to that. Yeah. Fred, do you?
I don't know.
Yeah. To me, it looked like they were black and white photos that had been, and the color had been added, but I cannot swear to that. That was what it appeared like to me.
I went into the, what was left of the Danish Village, which was just a pile of bricks and some stones and some other things. But the tiles that you saw here were clay tiles in Ribe, Denmark. But the ones that were used at the Danish Village were actually metallic, the metal of some sort, shaped like they were clay tiles, but they were just, they were metal. And I have a few of them at home, but yeah.
How did the Danish Village come to naught? When was it ripped down? Did it catch fire? Or how?
Rodney, could you answer that question? Because I think you probably have better insight into what happened to the Danish village.
There were at least 2 fires there over the years. I think one of them was in the 1960s, and there had been one previous. So in looking at the old photographs of the town hall, the earliest photos show a spire up on the roof, and then after that building had caught on fire, when it was reconstructed, they did not put the spire back on. So that gives you a kind of a timeline of before and after the first fire.
There may have been stories that I heard from the Scarborough Historical Society members, but we also heard that there was an incident that happened, not an incident, a situation that happened at the, when a famous movie star of the 30s, cowboy movie star of the 30s, was driven here by a black chauffeur, and they drove to the
Black
Point
Point
Inn.
Inn, yeah.
They drove to the Black Point Inn, and because there was a black chauffeur, now this is one of those things that happened back then, but nothing to do with the present ownership, of course. But they were turned away because of the chauffeur, and they came back and actually pulled into the Danish Village and were allowed to stay at the Danish Village.
One more thing I'll add, slightly related to your question, is one thing I found interesting was that as far as I can determine, the Danish Village operated as a motel for less than 15 years, because it was built in 1929 and it was taken over during World War II, right? So that would mean that it could not have operated actually as a motel for more than 15 years. And it never reopened up again as a motel after World War II, right? Okay.
Right. Yeah. Also, I don't think it was open in the winter. Now, someone could answer that question, but I think there was...
So I think it was seasonal, and then they tried to winterize those units for year-round occupation during the war. And they did a lot of other cabin establishments in Scarborough and in Greater Portland because housing was so short. But I think they had a lot of burst pipes and they weren't insulated, so I think it was a pretty tough place to live in the wintertime, but they did their best.
I went to school with a woman called Donna Grant Rauschke, and the story I want to tell you that I heard through Donna was her mother was a waitress there, and she waited on Eleanor Roosevelt. She ate there. And I believe in the Historical Society, on a display that we have, is her apron and some of the things that Donna and her family gave to the historical to see. So,
Fred, do you want to tell the story of her dog?
Do you want to tell us? No. Okay.
Where exactly was the Danish Village, and what's there now?
It's, you know where the big 20 bowling lane is?
Yes.
Holy Donut.
What is it?
The Holy Donut and the
Okay. It's, if you were looking at the bowling alley, it would be on the right-hand side. I think the Hospice of Maine is now in there, in that very same space. But I think that at not too, Rodney, you can answer this question as well, but I believe the water, or at least some of the marsh, came up behind where the Danish Village was, and so that you really got this feeling that it had the same geographic feel to it as Ribe, the Danish Village. in Denmark. That you could kind of look out on the backside and the water, some of the marsh water would be right there.
Two things. I used to live on the Willowdale Road, and I was there for 13 years. Nancy, well, I was a caregiver for Nancy Mitchell at Pine Point Manor, and she must have been born in, what, 1898 or something, early. She said, at the end of Willowdale Road, there's a farmhouse, and she was a girl there, and she remembers looking out her second-story bedroom window and seeing a fire at the Danish Village. Yeah. And while I was living on Willowdale, my ex-husband used to go across the street and dig around to try to find artifacts because the building was still there. Yeah, he never found anything but broken pieces of stuff. Oops, I'm looking at
So it was my understanding there were 2 dumps on the site. One of them was a construction dump with remnants of building materials, and there was also a kitchen dump for broken glassware and various things that they threw out. So that may be where Joe picked up some pieces of pottery that they didn't really haul their rubbish off-site. They just took it a short way and dumped it.
Are there any pieces of chinaware or silverware that you had at the museum that was there?
Yes, there are, and I can't tell you the name of the company that produced the china, but I believe the pattern is called Denmark.
It's not Royal Copenhagen, is it, by any chance? I'm sorry.
What was the weather like over there? It seemed to me we were in the rain quite a bit.
It rained a lot. When we drove there from Ribe, it rained. When we drove back, it rained. I mentioned the Viking Center, which is mostly outside open air, and we didn't go because it was raining. So. End of August. Yeah.
My wife was taking a history course in the mid-70s at the University of Southern Maine. And she was sitting in class and they had to write a thesis for the end of the class. And there was a woman who was telling my wife that she wanted to write the history, or a history of the Danish Village. And my wife mentioned the fact that my grandmother could answer might be able to answer some questions for her, and she would check to see if she would be willing to have an interview by the student. So my wife mentioned this to my grandmother, and she said, well, I'll tell you what I'm going to do. I'll have her come to the house, and if I like her and I get along with her, I will serve her tea. So my grandmother was kind of like that, but she got along with her very well, and she did serve her tea, and there was she wrote a very good article about the Danish Village. And by the way, there are some the landmarks had publication about the Danish Village, and there's some free pamphlets there. Please take some with you that describes the Danish Village in quite good detail.
Thanks. So please feel free to come get some candy.